Eagle Talk fam?
What's up, guys? We are back with a good one.
Yes, welcome to episode number 114. Seeing is believing.
Yeah, that is definitely true in our case.
Yes, so here's the thought, guys. Have you ever considered that the fact that it's hard for you to dream or it's hard for you to see life differently is because you just have not been exposed or seen it any differently than the way you're doing it now?
Yeah.
I think back to Corey and I, when we relocated or we made the decision to relocate to Texas. We made it in 2013 and relocated in 2014. I will never forget, there was a moment that Corey and I, we had just gone to the Potter's house to church. Then we came back up to Plano. We went to go have drinks at the church. God bless us. At this place called Blue Martini.
Yep.
And it was fall. The weather was good. The windows were open. We saw all of these fantabulous cars driving past, people walking down the street holding hands. And me and Corey looked at each other and we were like, we cannot believe people out here living like this, right? And it truly, like, now it is common for us, the things that we see. But if we would have never seen it, like if we wouldn't have stepped outside of our comfort zone, exposed ourselves to what at the time seemed like vacation living every day, then we wouldn't have known that it was attainable. And I know that that was one of the first times for me where I was just like, wow, you know, it's so much possibility, like in exposing yourself into different things. And now that you know what is available, then you can go after it.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but that day probably changed our legacy.
Yeah.
Because I think the next day I got on a plane with you and just told you we were moving.
Yep.
I didn't know how. I just knew that we were moving. And that was September.
Yeah.
Once a month, we came back here and visited and looked at different areas. And March 20th, which is my birthday, I signed the lease for the house. You remember?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that happened quick. But if we
wouldn't have saw it.
Exactly.
Right. If we would have made the first initial step to see it, then it would be hard to even believe it to be possible.
And the crazy part about it, I'm thinking about my childhood as you were giving the story. I used to talk to so many people in my age group, let's just say I was 7th, 8th grade, that had never left the south side of Chicago. They had never vacationed.
When I taught, like, there was a statistic when I was teaching on the south side of Chicago. I forget the statistic, but let's just say 60% of the students typically had never been outside of 1 square mile of where they
Their
live.
neighborhood, yeah.
You know, so they did everything right in the neighborhood to the point that I remember we did like a multicultural study, and my class, we had Asia. 3rd grade studied Asia, and I thought, oh great, it would be great to go to a hibachi restaurant, right? Well, little did I know that my students, some of them had never ever been to a restaurant. So you take them in front of a hibachi grill where the fire is going. Like, I never forget, this little girl went under the table, cried, and just couldn't come up. I finally got her up. But the most interesting thing is, like, a lot of those students, you go to hibachi, they give you so much food. A lot of those students went home with their leftovers. I never got so much parent participation calling me the next day trying to figure out where we went to get that food because it was so, but they had never experienced it, right? So one of the biggest things that we can do for ourselves is put ourselves in position where we are exposing ourselves to new things. Yeah. And even when I think about early on in our relationship, and it never dawned on me until you just said it now, you have always been a dreamer. Always. And I was not a dreamer. And I think, like, right now in this moment, I had an aha moment. The difference for us was exposure, right? We both came from middle class-ish families, middle class for the south side of Chicago. But the difference is that Corey had an entrepreneur uncle who was a millionaire, right? Who exposed them to different things that let him know what was available in life. So when I met you and you were dreaming for this life, to me, I'd only seen it on TV where you saw it up close and personal?
Yeah, so my childhood, even though my parents were, I don't want to say blue collar workers, but my father worked for CTA, my mother worked for my grandmother. My uncle, my father's brother, had multiple restaurants. So like sometimes on the weekend, we go to his house, and his house is, 8,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And he got the Bentley and the Ferrari outside.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I don't think it was really about the things.
But you just knew that this was
I knew
available.
it was possible. Yeah, yeah. So that right there at a very early age allowed me to dream. And it also taught me that I didn't want to settle for anything.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't want to just go get a degree and a $40,000 a year job and just work it for 30 years. It wasn't in my plan.
Yeah. I'm taking myself back, and I'm about to tell myself a little bit because I was always kind of a closet thinker. And I think I don't know if it's fair to call myself a closet thinker, but I only thought about life from what my experience was, right? So I remember even when we had put a deposit down to build our house that we live in right now. And I thought Corey was crazy, y'all.
Out of my mind, she told me.
This is what people don't say, but I bet that I'm not the only one that has felt like this, is that I just felt like some things were not available to me, right? And that could be, I'm going to talk about a house, but even the way our marriage is right now, I didn't realize that was available to me, right? To be in, this type of relationship. Some of the friendships, some of the authentic relationships that I get to have. Not to say that I wasn't in great relationships, but I just didn't think that living like this was available to me. So when we were, you put down on this house, I thought you was crazy. Quite honestly, the whole time I'm just waiting. The entire
process.
I'm trying to figure out how am I going to console this man when they say we can't get this house, right? And I'm in my quiet time with the Lord, just really like battling him for giving me this husband who keeps pushing me out of my comfort zone. And the Lord was clearly like telling me, like, Rosemary, do you trust me? Like, I can look back at my journals during that time where he pretty much was affirming that he was going to allow this for us. And it was hard for me to believe it because I hadn't seen it. So, of course, I seen the house, I seen the model. And I remember closing my eyes real tight, y'all. This is such a vulnerable conversation. And I remember like trying to visualize, because that's what all the gurus say, right? You have to visualize it to see it in order for it to come to pass. And I remember closing my eyes really, really tight. And I tried to visualize myself cooking in that beautiful kitchen. And I tried to see myself like making tacos. I tried to see myself, pulling out cabinets, whatever. And I could not see it. Like I kept blocking myself from seeing it. And then finally, when I saw it, tears started rolling down my face. And I was like, Lord, if you allow this to happen, I promise you that everyone who comes through these doors, I'm going to make sure they know about you and that this is truly heavenly ground. And it was even before, like we went through a lot of challenges to actually get the house, but it was just the fact that he gave me the vision to see that it could actually happen. And now I want to remodel that kitchen. Not only are we in it, but I want to remodel it.
Not only do you want to remodel the kitchen, but 2 weeks ago we just looked at a lot, new lot to build a new house. So it was like, oh, here we go again. I know.
And it's not about the house, right? But it's about exposing yourself to the possibility of what could be.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I think that it's easy to just fall into what you've always seen and not believe, and then you're not believing for anything beyond what you've always seen.
So that's the key word that I want to talk about. It's the belief, right? Yeah. Because most people don't believe that it's obtainable or that they deserve it.
Yeah.
Or if they do get it, that they can keep it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
always waiting for the bottom to fall out.
Always waiting for the bottom to fall out. So I have lived a life of not only do I believe it, and if I'm thinking about it, but I can't really visualize it, I need to get in a space.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I need to change the environment. And I've done that with business. I've done it with family. I manifested a Tesla at the same time I was building.
We don't manifest.
Okay, I didn't manifest it. What did I do with it?
You had the visual, and the reason why I say we don't manifest, y'all, some people might disagree with this, but I feel like saying that we manifest things, it puts it back into us in our own power.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Where we fully are dependent on the power of Jesus Christ. And we understand that even if we can want something real bad, but if it's for us, it's for us. If it's not according to his will. But what you did was you figured out how to get it. So it's not that it didn't just magically appear.
Well, I think it's more about the time.
Yeah.
Because it was happening at the same time we was building a house, right?
Yeah.
And I looked up, if we closed in April, May, the car was here.
Okay, and I'm not saying a but here's the piece, right? Because I don't want to just act like the car appeared.
Right.
Right? The first thing is you had the vision, like, this is what I want.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you made the decision. Before you got the car, you went and you test drove them. Mm-hmm. You looked at them. You researched them. You had another friend who was researching them with you.
Yeah.
Then you went to figure out, okay, well, how can I purchase it? You went to down several different avenues. When one avenue didn't work or that wasn't the right car, you didn't stop and say, oh, I guess it wasn't for me. Right? You kept going to figure out, okay, how am I going to bring this to pass?
Yeah.
So, and that's what I think the difference is too, is sometimes we see something, we get the vision for it, but then when we get hit with that first no, we try to figure out, okay, well, maybe it wasn't for me, mm-hmm. right? And I know that we're speaking at it in the respect of like things, but y'all, things are like the most minute part of the seeing is believing.
Yeah.
But that's just these are just easy examples to give.
Yeah.
But the first thing is that we have to actually believe that it's possible. Mm-hmm. And then when you believe that it's possible because you've been exposed to it, now you can start putting the wheels in motion and actually taking action steps towards accomplishing that thing that you want. Yeah,
so I'm thinking one way to lose in these situations is to stay in your comfort zone.
Yeah.
That's a huge way. I just figured out our son like Mexican rice 2 days ago. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've been trying to get him to explore food, and he ate 3 plates of Mexican rice. But I'm saying you have to get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I've learned that some ways good, some ways bad, because a lot of times I might just overdo the risk, right? But it's something about getting out of the comfort zone that magnifies growth.
And willing to try something new.
Yeah.
Right? Being willing to try something new, because sometimes, just showing some flexibility will change your life. I think about last week, our conversation with David Symes. If you all haven't checked it out, it's episode 113. Mm-hmm. And he really talked about, how he was living in the Midwest and just where he was living and the circumstances around his life. He was in every project, and, his mom, unfortunately, was addicted to drugs. His parents were in and out of the penitentiary. It wasn't until he went to Atlanta, Georgia, mm-hmm. he said he got to see people that looked like him that were successful, but they weren't successful because of drugs, right? And when he exposed himself to that, then it changed the game. But what if he wouldn't have been willing to get on the airplane?
Yeah.
Right? What if he would have been too scared to leave, to fly, to do, all these different things that we have allowed to block us from even exposing ourselves to something new? Then he would have missed what would have been the setup for his life to change. Yeah.
I'm also, it's a piece that he was talking about when he was talking about, we were actually talking about taking action. That's what it was. Because you can get the information, and then you can sit on the information, and then the information becomes stale, and then you forget all about the information, right? So a lot of times when you get it, you have to instantaneously act on it in order for you to be able to start seeing some of the things that you're even thinking about for it to happen.
Like, sometimes we are so not willing to take the risk that now everything is a settle moment.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking about a good friend of ours. We've said this on a podcast before, a family member. They were in our pool one day, and I said, like, she like holding her arm up in the pool because she on an Apple Watch.
Right.
And I was like, well, you know that watch is waterproof. And she like, oh, I'm not getting my watch wet. I'm like, but it's waterproof. Like, worst case scenario, you take it back to Apple. Well, no, I can't. I'm like, dog, they got a setting for swimming. Like, they wouldn't have that if you couldn't do it. But she was so unwilling to take the risk.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, when I look at other areas of that life, I can see
her whole life is lived like that.
I can see the results of not willing to take baby step risks.
Yeah. So we've talked about visualization. We've talked about taking a risk. What happens when you don't take the risk? We've talked about exposing yourself to a different opportunity, and we've also talked about comfort zones.
Yeah.
So that covers a lot on really how to get your mind set on to believing something that you can achieve.
Yeah.
Right?
So this is where we want to end, Eagles, is that we want to challenge you, and we want y'all to come back to the comments section of this podcast, come back to YouTube, come back to us on Instagram. And I want us all this week, today, if you can, expose yourself to something that you haven't exposed yourself to, right? So if you're booking an airplane ticket, maybe you book first class this time. If you are driving past a car dealership and you always wonder what it feels like to ride a Benz, you know they're not checking credit to test drive, right? Like you can go test drive that thing today.
Yeah.
You know, if you have passed this restaurant 100 times and you have never just stopped in to see what's even on the menu, just do something today that will expose you to something that you've never experienced before. And a lot of times it can be something. Last night, me and some girlfriends, we went out to dinner, and when you went to the restaurant, the ambiance was gorgeous. And it was right in the neck of like where we always, like a stomping ground for us. But because we never walked in these doors, we hadn't exposed ourselves to the beauty that was in this restaurant.
Yeah.
So Eagles, like, I really want you to think through, and it don't have to be life-changing, but what is something that you can do to expose yourself to something different today?
Yeah. It's going to take a different mindset also to get there. You know, it's not a subtle mindset. It's the exact opposite of what we're talking about. So hopefully these couple of nuggets will help you guys with your mindset and the believing that you can achieve what you're thinking about.
Yep. And we also want to leave you with another just resource. If you haven't already picked it up, in episode 111, we really talked about the roadmap that we use for our lives, which is the 5 F's. Faith, family, fitness, finances, and fun. So this is a great area where if you want to grab that resource and think to yourself, okay, where am I? Where can I expose myself to something different in the realm of faith? Where can I expose myself to something different in the realm of finances? Where can I do something different in fun? Go ahead and grab that resource at eagletalkpodcast.com/5F, the number 5F.
Yep. Well, thank y'all. We appreciate y'all for coming. Seeing is believing. Go out there and do some of those tactics and principles we just talked about, and we can't wait to hear your stories.
Yep. Can't wait
See
to
y'all
hear
next
about it.
time.
Bye, y'all.